Okay, starting off for the persistence, how we first set up the SQL Server is we're going to here create a SQL Server service in our startup SES using a connection string. This default connection actually lives in app settings.json. And here we can see the server is localhost, name and database, whatnot. And how we actually use this service here is as a dependency injection into our controller. So, actually, first, here's our, we're actually using Entity Framework. So, here is the database context, which is required. And here we're constructing it using the options. And this option comes from the startup.cs, that initialization that we created. And also here are our 4 DB sets, which correspond to tables in our SQL Server. So, we exit off of that. Here we can see the this is our controller, and this is the dependency injection here of that our database context. And we do pretty much pass in for each API call. We pass in that context to a task list EC class, which is pretty much going to do all the work of querying the database and take that out of the controller. So yeah, every API call is going to do that. It's going to call a new instance of task list EC. And here in task list AC, is where all the work is done. And here as well, we're taking in that same DB context. And for each call, we are using that DB and using LinQ to query what we want from it. And I'm not going to go through all this because it would take forever, but it does the same thing as it did previously, except now we're using LinQ to query the DB sets. And here is the tables for the items here. First is tasks, and we're going to be using unique identifier, so which is GUID for the ID and list ID. And this task is just going to correspond to the same properties that the task has had throughout the entire class. Appointments is similar, except here we're not going to include the attendees here. The attendees are actually going to be in their own table, except they're going to have a corresponding item ID. So whenever you want to get the attendees for a certain appointment, you'll query this attendees table and get every single attendee that has the item ID you're looking for. Named list here is corresponding to all the lists that are currently in the database, and it has an ID right here, which we will use to identify the appointments and tasks. So each appointment and task has a list ID. So when you want to get a list, you're gonna query with this list ID for appointments and tasks. And I will show this in action, the UWP app. So let me start this off. While that's running, yep. And here we can see these lists that we currently have. Test2, list, and test. Now, if you want, we can see we have 3 lists here. I'm going to add a task here. Some random stuff. Data. We can see here that completing, editing, toggling priority, all functions correctly, and toggle priority. It's going to be a call to the database, so every single time an item is changed in a list, it's going to refresh by refreshing the entire list. So any of these changes, changing this name right here, it's going to go and refresh the entire list and come back to the list. And we can see here the items are still sorted by priority. If I want to complete this one, it's going to remove it. And since our show complete has the checkbox off, pop that back on, it's going to appear again. And here, actually, to show that this persists, I'm going to close the UWP app, and then also stop the API, and then start up the API again. Once that's up and running, whenever it feels like it, there it goes. Come on. Whenever you're ready. There we go. You can see just through that this is persisted, because normally in the static classes that would be gone. And start up the UWP app again. And we'll see our lists and our items are still here. They are persisted in the SQL Server. And if you want to look at them in there, might as well. And this will load. It's a lot for my laptop to handle. Come on. And we connect to our local database. Put a new query here. If you want to look at all the task lists we have, we just do this little query, and we execute it, and here is our task lists, and we want to do tasks, and execute, and here's the tasks that we have, so we can see that it's being stored here.